whenever I'm chanting, certain words pop out, and that the longer you practice, the more that happens. That you've been chanting these chants for months, years, and they become a kind of rote thing, but they actually are penetrating in and changing you, informing you. So now you receive and maintain it. So all of you, everyone who's practicing right now, is maintaining, is preserving this precious teaching so that it's accessible to future generations who will certainly need it. Suffering is not going to go away next year. So we are the maintainers of this practice and the people who are passing it on to the future. I don't know how people live a human life without a spiritual foundation. A spiritual foundation to keep them sane, and not just sane, but living life with ease. Without a spiritual foundation to help provide a framework for the suffering in the world. One of our fundamental questions is, why is there so much suffering in the world? What's the cause of it? This is what drove the Buddha away from the palace, out of the palace. This deep, deep koan, the original koan of the Buddha. I don't know how people live a human life without a spiritual foundation to help them decrease the suffering in their own life, and thus in the lives of everyone they come in contact with and the world around us. If you look at the state of the world, there are a huge number of problems. So many things that we can worry about. Sometimes I just look at the headlines and count the negative ones. So among today's headlines, leprosy may now be endemic in Florida, scientists say. Oh, good. Leprosy is in the United States now and spreading. Niger's military junta has just hours to restore ousted President Bazoum to power or face the possibility of military action from the regional bloc ECOWAS. This is a group of African nations who have agreed, it's kind of like NATO, but in Africa, to help nations that are in trouble. A bomb threat against Oregon Health and Sciences University caused staff and patients to be evacuated from the Richmond Primary Care Walk-in Clinic. This is yesterday. It is the latest in a string of attacks and harassment against healthcare facilities, spurred by far-right culture war issues and COVID conspiracies. The threat was in response to a story posted on a far-right anti-trans website alleging a cancer patient had been dropped by the clinic over remarks she made about the LGBTQ+ community. The clinic is one of a handful that provide gender-affirming care. So I've noticed, being a healthcare worker, that there are now signs, they've appeared in the last few years, in clinics and hospitals that say it is illegal to attack healthcare workers. When did that become necessary and how? How have we gone from gratitude for the sacrifice of healthcare workers to attacking them, harming them? The war in Ukraine. Today, Moscow unleashed a massive missile and drone barrage on western Ukraine, following through on its promise to retaliate for a Ukrainian attack on a Russian tanker. A huge country attacking a small country. Why? Because of one leader's ideas, self-centered delusion, that he can restore the territory and power of an archaic, imperial and violent state, and thereby go out in a blaze of glory. It's like the Prime Minister, you don't realize how absurd it is until you begin to compare it to other things. So it's like the Prime Minister may maybe current King Charles of the UK, saying, we want America back. And India and Ghana and Australia and Canada too. They all used to be part of our empire, and we want to restore the empire. So from that perspective, we can see how absurd it is. But from within Russia, people can't. Many people can't. Some people are talking about the second civil war in the US. Yesterday there was a video showing Trump supporters yelling, "That's a traitor and you're a sellout," to Pence as he was doing a campaign stop. And he responded gently, saying, "Read the Constitution." Polls show that a majority of Americans believe that political visions have worsened since the beginning of 2021. 2 out of 5 think a civil war is likely to break out within the next decade. 66% say Americans have become more split politically since the start of 2021, and they are largely pessimistic about the future of the United States. Predicting violence will worsen, the sense of separation will worsen, and so on. So again, if you look at it from the perspective of history, and as many of you know, I get an archaeological feed on my news, and every week there's some new civilization discovered that people knew about from historical records, but didn't know where exactly it was, and then they find it and they uncover it through LiDAR penetrating radar in forests in Central and South America, or just through curiosity about what this mound is, and then they dig into it and find it's a whole city. And these civilizations lasted, a few hundred years, maybe 1,000, maybe several thousand in the case of China, but during that time China went through many iterations. Egypt the same. So why do we expect that our quote civilization in this quote democracy will survive forever and is the best and should be spread around the world? So we human beings, when we're upset, we tend to blame somebody else. So we look around for who to blame. So Trump wants to blame Pence. Conspiracy theorists blame their troubles, this is QAnon, and problems in the world on a cabal that includes top Democrats like President Biden, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, George Soros, as well as a number of entertainers and Hollywood celebrities, those evil people, Oprah Winfrey, Tom Hanks, Ellen DeGeneres, and Pope Francis and the Dalai Lama. You might as well just widen the basket and put everybody you don't agree with in it. And many QAnon followers believe that in addition to molesting children, members of this group, it's hard not to laugh, but these people are serious, believe that members of this group kill and eat their victims to extract a life-extending chemical called adrenochrome. All of this activity consists of blaming someone else. And it's kind of neat, if you can put it in a little package and say, there's the blame right there. There's the problem right there. So if we attack that problem, then we'll solve all the problems in my life. But our practice asks us to look at this very carefully and look at ourselves very carefully. When we're distressed, when we're in pain, either psychological or physical pain, we can watch the tendency within ourselves to blame someone else. When we were up at Larch Mountain, which is where we had a retreat center before we moved here 21 years ago, there was a family who volunteered to come and help us establish this place of practice. And they had practiced in their Gurdjieff movement for years, so they were very aware of the states of their hearts and minds. And one of them was a carpenter, and he said that one day he was working in his shop, and he cut very badly his thumb. And he wrapped a rag around it, but even before he wrapped a rag around it, his mind immediately said, it's Pam's fault. Pam was his wife who was miles away. His mind immediately said, it's Pam's fault. So he was telling me this story because I had pulled open a freezer door on our freezer, and a propane bottle, not a huge one, but a medium-sized one, fell off and hit me on the head. And my immediate thought was, it's Hogan's problem, Hogan's fault. And then you go like, what? He's not anywhere around. But you can see the mind's tendency to try to figure out what is the source of my suffering, and then take care of it. In practice, you can watch that happen over and over again. And then you can justify, going to that person and saying, so if you hadn't, this is in Mike's case, the first person, if you hadn't sent the dog with me and you kept the dog at home, the dog wouldn't have distracted me. But that's all, unfolded later. It's the immediate thought that we catch ourselves in that is so amazing. And my immediate thought was, first was, it's Hogan's fault. And then the mind has to develop like a dialogue around that or rationalization. Oh, Hogan must have put that on the top of the refrigerator too close to the door, and when the refrigerator shook, then it fell off and hit my head. But then even when I thought about that story, I realized, I don't know if he put it up there or I put it up there. So this is the space that our practice gives us to be able to look at what is going on. How are we creating suffering in our minds? It can be very subtle, but in our practice, we examine our hearts and minds, and we look for the subtle, very barely detectable roots of our suffering. My favorite example, which I've mentioned a lot, and we've all experienced, is you look up and you see a stranger walk in the door. And then judgment comes in immediately, based on hundreds of clues, like how they dress, how they walk, how they style their hair, what accent they have, whether they look you in the eye, whether they smile, how their teeth look when they smile, etc., 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 etc. It's instantaneous. One Theravada teacher said, trying to watch this happen, in this case, how we create suffering out of a person walking in the door. He said it's like falling out of a tall tree and trying to count the branches on the way down. It just happens so fast. And, when that happens and we have a negative judgment about somebody walking in the door, we may not attack them overtly, but a subtle flavor arises in our mind, tinged with negative or positive feelings. We call that feeling tone. And it's the second thing that happens in the chain of how we create suffering. First there's perception, then there's feeling tone. And feeling tone sets the stage for positive or negative emotions, or for ignoring. For saying, I don't care, who cares, whatever, not my problem. So for a moment, let's just, wherever you are, and certainly for everyone here, just close your eyes and open your awareness to what is actually happening right now. The sensations maybe under your feet or under your bottom. Sensations of your clothing moving as you're breathing. the breeze, sounds of the birds when they erupt, maybe sounds of the insects. Whatever you can perceive when you widen your awareness outside of yourself. And then see if you can detect the feeling tone. So first a feeling tone towards here and outside, towards the breeze. Is it positive, negative, or neutral? Now the feeling tone that accompanies your perception of bird song or insect noise. Now there's the sound of a car, feeling tone associated with the sound of the car. Positive, negative, or neutral? Now let your mind scan all the people that are around you. Here we have a large circle of people. Just scan in your awareness around that circle. And for those at home, just scan the people, anybody who's in your environment, just become aware of them, or in the apartment building where you live or outside. Just scan and observe. Positive, negative, or neutral feeling tone. And then you can do it towards the sound of my voice. So listening to the sound of my voice, positive, negative, or neutral feeling tone. I will keep talking so that you can discern whether there's a positive, negative, or feeling tone just towards the sound of my voice. Just towards the sound of my voice. You know, that's something we automatically do. We hear somebody speak and we have positive, negative, or feeling tone towards the quality of their voice. So that positive, negative, so there's perception, pure perception, unstained by anything. It's like the vibrations on the eardrum and the recognition in the brain sound. Completely untinged. It's in a way very mechanical. So there's perception, like the feeling of the ground underneath your body. It's just a feeling. It's just a physical sensation. But then we add the feeling tone, positive, negative, or neutral. And then we add thoughts, and that develops into emotions, positive or negative emotions. So reading the news. You know, actually we're just looking at pixels on a computer screen or on a piece of paper. It's just pure dots. Objectively, that's what it is. But then we have, before we even register it, a positive, negative, or neutral feeling tone. Then the mind says, oh, what? Why? What? And then it says, oh, Ukraine war, terrible. So as soon as thought is added, then we're off to the, I would say off to the races, I would say we're off to suffering. So when we begin to practice in this tradition, we can look at how does Buddhism look at the troubles of the world. So not how we see it, but what's the larger picture of the Buddhist perspective. It's looked at as karma. Karma not meaning fate, not meaning punishment for all your bad deeds or rewards for all your good deeds. But karma as a chain of cause and effect, an endless chain of cause and effect. That's actually what it means. So an endless chain of cause and effect led you to listen to this talk, however you're listening to it. So you might think, well, I'm here in training, and so this is on schedule, that's why I'm here. But why did you come to the monastery? And then you look backwards through time and through generations, and you realize it's an endless chain of cause and effect. How did your parents affect your growing up? That you're interested in the issue of suffering. How about your grandparents? You know, many people tell me, I often advise people when they go home, be curious and ask about your parents' history or your grandparents' history. And you will hear all kinds of things that they went through and endured that you had no idea happened. Then you begin to understand that this chain of karma stretches back further than our imagination can reach. And it resulted in you being here, my being here, and sound coming out of my mouth. And then your interpretation of that sound. So cause and effect. Cause and effect. That's how we look at troubles in the world from the point of view of Buddhism. One cause, like a drone bombing a Russian tanker, which happened a few days ago, becomes an effect. Actually, many effects. The ship is disabled, people are killed, Russian leaders get angry, they want to retaliate, they bomb whatever they want to bomb. You know, Zelensky's hometown, to get revenge at him. Grain shipments are disrupted. Then people are hungry and starving in Africa. Then there are coups, and so on. So in our practice, we acknowledge that this chain of cause and effect is endless. And what can we individuals realistically do to interrupt those chains of cause and effect? By the world's standards, we live in the wealthiest country in the world. We're well-resourced. We're educated, we're housed, we have a healthy diet. We're probably talented in many ways. But realistically, what can we do to change the stream of daily events that we read about in the news? Can we, this has to be asked of each one of us, can we change Trump? Can we change who Trump is? We can vote to see how much power a person is given. Can we change Joe Biden? Can we change Prince Harry and Meghan Markle? You know, there's so much in the news devoted to trying to change them or figure them out or attack them. It's like a waste of time, people's energy. It's crazy. Imagine that you could change Putin. How would you do that? How would you change Putin's mind about this war? I'm sure many people are plotting to assassinate him. So let's say he's assassinated. Would that solve the world's problems? No. But there are many people who attempt assassinations in the world who believe that killing one person will solve all their problems. And the only person we even have a chance to change is ourselves. And that is very hard, as those of us who are actively practicing to change our heart minds discover. But the only link in the chain of difficult karma that gets passed down, that we have a hope of truly changing, is ourselves. The only person we can save is ourselves. But in doing that, we transform everything around us, from suffering into ease. And that is a profound change that most people never have a chance to do. We've been chanting Dogen Zenji's 800-year-old instructions on how to do this. The way is originally perfect and all-pervading. It is never apart from this very place. What is the use of traveling to find it? Peace and happiness and relief of suffering are never apart from this very place. We have to keep looking at what prevents us from experiencing life this way. Here at the monastery, we're sitting in a peaceful place with the grass fresh, the air fresh from a sprinkle of rain overnight. The sun isn't too hot because it's a bit overcast. The temperature is perfect. Breakfast was tasty. The beautiful sky is like a vast, ever-changing work of art overhead. We often sit in the meadow and look out at the hills. And you can just sit and watch the mists arise in the morning and dissipate, or in the evening, the clouds that are colored with the sunset. This is like our own, very own art museum, the sky. Swallows are catching mosquitoes for us. The bees in the garden are busy pollinating our food. The trees all around us are busy providing us with oxygen, taking in our carbon dioxide. Plants in the garden are converting the energy of sunlight into forms that we're able to eat, that will nourish us. Red and orange tomatoes, lettuce in many shapes and colors of green, spicy orange nasturtium blossoms, the breeze caressing our cheeks. So for those who can feel that breeze, any breeze, can you turn it from neutral to positive? The touch of loving kindness on your cheek. A touch of loving kindness, a caress on your cheek. You are loved. The constant presence of loving kindness, the earth always meeting our feet as we step. Our bed supporting us as we lie down. And FedEx and UPS delivering all the things that we've ordered to make us even happier right to our door. What keeps us from being aware of this constant shower of blessings? Again, this is the question that drove the Buddha to leave home. Why do human beings suffer, and is there a cure for it? Dogen Zenji points out how we turn away from happiness and towards suffering. If the least like or dislike arises, the mind is lost in confusion. The least like or dislike, a hair's breadth deviation. How can we examine our heart-mind that closely enough to detect that hair's breadth deviation from ease into suffering? It's only in the spaciousness, in the silence of meditation, that we can see that happening. Because it begins so subtly. So again, open your awareness to the breeze, caressing your cheek. Now drop in the word hurricane. See if you see a change. Or drop in the words climate change and see if you see a change in the state of the heart-mind. Now let all words go. Just let all the words in the mind dissolve. And just open to pure experience. Again, here to the breeze, touching your face, caressing your face. You see, I've used the word caress, which pushes it over towards positive feeling tone. But that's often necessary to correct the negative feeling tone or the ignoring feeling tone. The only person we have a chance to change is ourselves. And that is very hard, as those who are actively practicing to change their heart-mind discover. It might be doing work with a therapist. Here we do it through the spaciousness of mind created by meditation. As the mind slows down, there's enough space to see how it tries to protect us by focusing on the negative elements of the news. It's magnetically attracted to what's wrong because it's trying to protect us. But that very movement towards the negative aspect of the news creates suffering. It tries to protect us by forming judgment of other people before we've even spoken to them. It tries to protect us by criticizing and attacking ourselves, as we know from the work with the inner critic. As we sit, we can watch contentment. The contentment of just sitting, just breathing, just feeling the breeze, just watching the sunlight creep across the floor, just watching the movement of leaves in the trees, just lying on the grass and watching an insect crawl up a blade of grass, or a bee pollinate a little flower. We can watch contentment change to anxiety in a tiny moment when there's a hair's breadth deviation of the mind. And we can move back. We can watch over and over again how the mind veers off into problems. What should I do next month? Where can I find true love? How can I earn more money? How can I express myself as the artist I really am? Etc., etc., etc. I did a terrible job. Why did I say that stupid thing? Only when we have watched how our mind creates suffering out of nothing, out of words and pictures and movies that the mind itself generates, and watched it happen over and over, can we begin to be able to change that rutted pathway from perception to feeling tone to thoughts to suffering. Our minds have this beautiful capacity to think about the past, to think about the future. But that capacity has taken over and just creates suffering. Our minds have the beautiful capacity to create, to imagine things that we could create or build or cook or develop, write about. But we turn that beautiful creative capacity into a habit of just fantasizing, to escape from the actuality of the present moment. But why do we need to escape? What is that overlay of suffering that keeps intruding? The most important capacity, what we have to relearn through our practice, is the capacity to not think. Dogen Zenji says that really clearly in the instructions for Zazen. To practice not thinking. How to practice not thinking? Practice not thinking. When we're not thinking, then we're fully present. When we're fully present, we've opened the heart-mind to what is actually true right here, right now. And there's a wonderful settling into that truth, even if the body has physical pain. We can watch in our practice how when we settle into the truth of what actually is, doors open, things change. The most beautiful moment is when somebody in sesshin comes in and says, I sat with pain in the following way, and there are many ways to do it, and a door opened, and I have a completely different relationship to pain now. That is a huge triumph in a human life, to change our relationship to pain, whether it's physical pain or mental emotional pain. That's what the Buddha was talking about. We can do it. We can all do it. We all have that capacity. In Zen, we say we're reclaiming our birthright. Dogen Zenji says the treasure chest will open of itself and you will be able to enjoy its riches. And the treasure chest is this very life, this very existence. Once it's not clouded by constant thinking, by constant anxiety, we can just open to what is and experience it fully. Even physical pain, even emotional pain becomes interesting and something to investigate. I really don't know how people live a human life without a spiritual foundation. A foundation to keep them sane, to help provide a framework for all the suffering we're aware of in the world, to help each one of us decrease the suffering in our own life, and thus in the lives of the people and the world around us. The only place that we're alive is right now. And now. And now. That's the only place we're alive. Liberation is not something to change in the future. It exists right here. If we remove the tangle of thoughts that covers it up. The only link in the chain of difficult karma that has persisted for 200,000 years, that we have a hope of truly changing, is ourselves. And we're so fortunate to have discovered a practice that's been helping people turn the suffering of a human life into the inherent ease of a human life for over 2,560 years. We are so fortunate to sit here, wherever we're sitting, with the support of the earth, with the support of all life. Please rejoice in that good fortune. Oh, I have one more thing. Jolan was talking here about wanting to do Zen cartoons. And I'm going to post this on the bulletin board. But this is Pearls Before Swine cartoon. And so the pig and the mouse are climbing a mountain. And up on the top is like a donkey sitting in meditation. So there's a sign that says, "Wise ass on the hill." So they climb up, and then the pig says, "Help me, great wise ass." And the wise ass says, "To do what?" And the pig says, "To not be so afraid. I spend every moment in fear of everything." And the wise ass says, "To what end?" And pig says, "To be safe." And wise ass says, "To do what?" And pig says, "To live longer." And the wise ass says, "To live longer, why?" And pig says, "To have more years on this earth." And wise ass says, "In order to spend more time being afraid?" And then pig comes down and says to mouse, "Fear is stupid." Thank you, everyone.